report in a place that we can then read together and understand and choose whether or not it's saying what we want to say or not. So I went back to the draft from July and started again to really try to hone in on defining need. After we talked on the other day, this is what this committee is about. It's trying to identify what the needs are. And that's really what our task is up to the sort of the interim report hierarchy. And so this report should reflect that. It should really just reflect as much as possible what have we learned, what have we uncovered about needs. And so that's what I think this report should reflect. Other thoughts about that? I mean, should it be more than that, less than that?
Well, my reaction is, I guess it depends on the intent of this report, because if the report is to sort of update the school committee about where we are, it seems to me that pretty much just fits on one page. We're collecting data, we're focusing on these issues, here's where we hope to go next, that kind of thing.
Yeah. No, I'm talking about what is the data. This report is to report out the data that we've collected thus far. So I would see the school committee saying, okay, that's nice, there's nothing really here, let's move on. We'd like you to go back and find, we think there's more data or questions we didn't answer.
But should we tell them that we think there is, and here's the additional data we need to collect?
That could be the end summary, the end result, sure. We may say we still don't have enough data, or we don't have the right data, or whatever the qualifier is. Because I don't know that.
Because this is just supposed to bring them up to date, right?
Bring them up to date, but with information, not just to say, we've met 7 times.
Okay.
It's not supposed to be just that.
Okay.
Because we've been updating them along the way in terms of we've been meeting, what we've been doing, and so forth. So.
Okay.
Because again, there is a window of time if, and it all depends. I'll try to reach out to MSBA to see if they do it annually because of their resources. They'll be putting out their SOI. If we don't make it for that December to January time period, then we missed that for another year.
Okay. I may be jumping way ahead in the conversation here. As I sit here right now, my gut says we're not ready. We're not going to be ready to do that.
Yeah, I'm not too far from there either.
Okay.
But just so you know, again, the SOI process is just a, hey, we're here, talk to us, and then it can go on for as long as it needs to get to another place, including, no, they don't think you have a project, or they don't think you have the need that they're going to participate in. Because they vote on their end too. Right.
No, I mean, I hope we'd be able to pull things together to submit something, but it's still a long runway in front of us.
Yep.
Is how it appears to me.
Right. And I think that this report should show us that length of that runway.
Okay.
To use your analogy, I think.
Okay.
After we read this, we should either be saying, "Wow, it's obvious to everybody what we have to do," or including, "Wow, there's no data. We're not looking in the right places. We didn't ask the right questions. Let's figure that out."
Okay.
Does that make sense to people?
So this basically puts us in the queue.
No, this doesn't.
This doesn't.
The statement of interest.
The statement of interest does.
But that we don't submit until beginning of the year.
Yeah, it's like a January deadline.
Yeah. I looked at the MSBA website this past week, and I think it said annually, starting in January or something like that, they have an open window.
Yeah.
What type of information do schools typically have in place before submitting a statement of interest?
Well, essentially, they have almost everything that has to go into the statement of interest.
Okay. So,
basically.
and which is online, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's all of the, so it's standardized information about the systems, the existing building, the history of the building, those pieces. So, you know, and using the frame that we used from the project, from the science project, it's not, you know, I'm trying to make it easy for us to, when we get to that point.
Yeah, so the intent, part of the intent of this report is to have that information.
Exactly,
compiled.
exactly. All right, that makes sense? All right, you're puzzled. Pensive.
I'm not puzzled, I wanna see where this goes.
I guess I had a question, so that if we, let's just say that we can see that there's some sort of need,
Mm-hmm.
but we haven't figured out what those needs exactly are, right? Or like exactly what we would need, not for solutions, but
Right.
what the needs are, right?
Yep.
Where do you need to be in the process to put a statement of interest in? Because after the statement of interest is a feasibility study, I guess it's assuming they kind of move forward with, that they want to move forward with
Right.
you. But what's the parameters of that feasibility study? Like, you know, kind of are you do they shape that feasibility study to you, or are you shaping based on what the information you provide to them and they either concur or don't concur at that time?
So it's a pretty prescriptive process for the feasibility study. You do have to hire someone to do that for you. We could not do that.
Yep.
But the architect essentially will come in and say, well, what led you to think you have some issues? So we'd give them this. We'd give them the 2008 study and the 2006 review that we did. 2008, I'm sorry, and 2012 study. And then they would start the process of essentially digging deeper into the areas of need that we've pinpointed.
Okay. So I think, yeah, I guess that's, for me, I think knowing if there's some need is very different than knowing what the need is, you know, kind of, and where we're at with that, with the statement of interest, I think is, at least for me personally, I think to me there's some apparent need, but it just, what exactly quantify that need is where kind of, where I think, kind of we need to be from now till whenever end of the year, kind of.
Right.
So the activity tonight is to review the document that's going to the school committee
Correct.
that would recommend a statement of interest? Or-
If we so choose.
Okay, so we're
I'm not even sure, if we can get to a place where we have consensus around recommendations, I think we should include it.
Okay, so this is not a recommendation to enter into the statement of interest?
Right now, it has nothing, it
Okay.
says nothing about that.
I think that's important.
Yeah. I don't, so I'm actually gonna suggest we start a little bit at the end, because what I tried to do at the very end is bullet as objectively, I'm really trying to make sure there are objective statements here, not like that are not opinions. And so I want to go through these bulleted pieces, because these are somehow elaborated. Hi, Maureen. Elaborated in the verbiage, and the verbiage I think folks can read on their own, and we can do that online in a different way. So I think the best place to start is the verbiage, is the bulleted parts. So. So, I don't know, will people see it better if I shut one of the lights off at least?
Can we zoom in on that? Can we
Zoom on a little bit? Sure. That's good. That good?
Yep.
Yeah.
Did you share this with us already?
I have not.
Okay. in
Oh,
this week.
okay.
I will not
Never
try to
mind
find
that.
it.
Don't try to find it.
I won't try to find it in the place I
No.
handed out.
All right. So, layout of the building doesn't allow teachers, students, and administrators to collaborate in a meaningful way. As I just said, that I didn't want opinion versus fact. This feels like
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
These are things that were collectively written, so I don't know, nobody owns it, but I mean, Perry, I'll ask you, how, I think internally we think this to be true. How would we quantify this or objectify it?
So there are two things. One is layout, and by layout, do you mean actual physical space, or do you mean also the way the space is laid out?
So I think that, as I read it, I'm thinking about the general connection of things to the building. For example, in most high schools that I've gone into, there are central arteries for the auditorium and the media center are central to the building, where ours are disparate parts of the building. But I take no ownership for anything that's written here because it's been a collection of things that people have said or written over the course of this committee.
So we currently have 6 identified spaces in the building where teachers can have desks that could be used as small meeting areas. We have 1 conference room large enough to handle more than 6 people. We have a teacher's lounge with some couches and a kitchenette. And that really defines the collaborative spaces in the building.
How many teachers could you put in that space if you got rid of the couches and put some tables in there for a collaborative space?
I mean, we've talked about actually turning it into 2 smaller rooms and creating a little conference room in there. I would say, I mean, if you wanted to, it's kind of like an L shape, so you could probably have 10 to 12 people here and 10 to 12 people here.
So maybe that's what you want to indicate is the number of people you could.
You think you could get 24 people sitting in a conference room in that room?
In the teacher's lounge?
The
Teachers'
teacher's lounge. I think you
It'd
could
be
get.
cozy.
I think you could
Very
get.
cozy.
I think you could get up to 12 there. Maybe that's an aggressive number, and maybe up to 12 over there. I mean, maybe we call it 10 and 10, 20-ish.
Let's go.
It would certainly be cozy.
I guess the whole thing started out with the number of deficiencies were identified, and then we're kind of going into like a bulleted list of what we have that at face value, you don't know if, kind of, it's not really the deficiency, it's a list of what you have versus kind of what you're missing, or like how short we're on something. So I think kind of if they're, I guess it's good to know what we have, but I guess at least for me, it's kind of like what's lacking, not kind of like to me. I look at those numbers and that could be fine. That could be half as much as you need. It could be a third of what you need. I don't really have a way to kind of.
Along that line of thinking, there's no indication here of how you're implying with your bullet point that the facilities you have are overloaded. And there's nothing here that says what the utilization of these areas is.
Can you put that into a statement? What would inform you about the utilization? Make it up. Just I'm trying to get your sense of your verbiage.
There are 6 meeting areas for teachers to work and collaborate. Their utilization, oftentimes teachers and students have to be turned away because they're already occupied. Yesterday, there were 4 instances of people being turned
Mhm.
away because
Mhm.
there was no place to collaborate.
Or it only meets the needs of X% population of the teaching staff.
Perry, of the meeting areas, how many teachers can be in there at any given time?
So we'll have up to 12 people.
Those are the department
Those are the
offices.
department offices.
You can fit 12 people. I know you could in the math department. Social studies room?
In English you could, in social studies you can. I mean, you know, it's a little bit tight. In foreign language you can, a little bit tight. I mean, you've got some desk space and then the
Yeah.
table space in the middle. Science, hard pressed to get that many in science. What am I leaving out? And then I'm also including the room that Mary Stavros, Linda, and Matt Ettinger use, and that would not fit up to 12 people.
Plus that's a TV studio.
Right.
And I think the other side of it is it's conducive to collaboration by the department as a whole because everyone's sitting around a big table, but as far as like people breaking off and like doing collaboration that you would do on a daily basis.
Mhm.
And sometimes those offices are mainly used that if it's a prep period, you need a place to go, and there's like in
Right.
the English office, there's a copy machine, you can get ready for your next class. You need a work area when you're not in a classroom.
Mhm.
So are you getting at subject-specific collaboration?
That's the best use for this space, yeah.
So maybe that's what you need to indicate. It's either, I don't know what you call it, I'm calling it a subject, but that
Department
section.
offices.
You
Mhm.
know.
But never, really never other than lunch, do all department members convene in these
Mhm.
locations, except maybe their department meetings?
Department meetings or PD sessions, and it can vary from, 3 or 4 people in a room at a time to
Mhm.
lunchtime when there's more, or after-school department meetings. You can have pretty much the entire department there.
But there's no separate office for a private conversation or a private meeting with a student or a parent in
No.
any of them, is
No.
there?
No.
Are they used a lot?
I mean, they're used for desk space where people go if they're not teaching in a classroom and their classroom's being used, or they don't have a classroom that's not being used at the time. They're used for department meetings, they'll be used for lunch.
And I mean, I think teachers do work together in there
Oh,
because there's no
definitely.
other
Mhm.
space available.
That's where they'll go and collaborate, if we have a humanities class and interdisciplinary lessons, they're working together in each other's departments. We also have in some of them, it's a Xerox copy machine in the English department, so people are getting ready for their classes, and that area is shared.
Mhm. Okay. But in your sense, Perry, is there any time when somebody's turned away?
No, there isn't a time when we say the room's too full for people to be in there.
Okay.
But I guess is the room full enough that people wouldn't, I mean, I guess wouldn't go and it wouldn't,
Yeah.
they're not like getting turned away, but it's too busy, so they're just not gonna go there,
And
kind
they
of.
are cramped. I mean, like, if
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the science department.
Oh,
office,
scientists.
You
Yeah.
know, 12 people can fit in there, but then you're just around a square table and, a person who didn't have to be in there when it was full wouldn't come in or even close to it. And definitely just to have a conversation with one person. They'd find another place though. But.
And what we don't have is we don't have smaller rooms for people to collaborate. Reg ed and special ed teachers want to work together. We don't have anything for fine and performing arts. for them to collaborate. We've got a very small kind of desk area for tech ed, but not real collaborative space for them.
So perhaps that's what the need that needs to be
Yeah,
quantified
like
is
a-
if we have 6 meeting areas for how many departments?
That's better.
Whatever.
That gets
Nine-
closer to it.
9 departments.
6 meeting areas for X number of departments and X number of staff.
Right.
And even if the need is for some additional smaller conference areas for smaller group collaboration, then at least you kind of,
So you have a total of 10 different departments.
Look at me.
Yeah, it depends on how you
Yeah.
count.
Yeah.
I hope we all
Coming up
agree
at
on
like
that.
9.
If you say
What
fine
to
arts
count?
is a department, if theater arts is a department,
I
these
was
two-
just making.
well, how many groups are potentially using that space, I guess?
Or would need collaborative space. Because these don't, for example, the ones that don't have a determined space have to figure out what to do. They don't invade these spaces.
No,
Correct.
they do not come into those are
Very
department
territorial.
workrooms. The ones
Oh,
that-
so there's 4 departments that just
That don't have the space.
fend for yourself.
Correct.
Right.
We count 11. We have-
You count 11?
Guidance.
I'm looking for page 4.
But
So,
we
yeah.
count
Yeah, I didn't count the ASC, but I guess
At least from what I'm hearing is that there's 5 departments that have no home at all,
Right.
and others that, if they had smaller collaborative conference rooms, that, that,
Like I have a media
Um,
center in that 11 is like
that would be
They don't
more
have-
ideal than
Right.
the current configuration.
Right.
Then includes guidance in there too.
So 11.
11.
Okay. We got like 1 teacher's lounge. This room does not have a bathroom
Correct.
attached to it, correct?
And the conference room holds up to about 12 people.
That's the one by
For
our
an
office.
office conference room.
Is there any staff bathroom facility?
Yes, there are.
Mhm.
There are staff designated bathrooms.
Yeah.
Throughout the building.
And for the teacher's lounge, like, okay, it holds 20 people, what, kind of how, what's the shortfall of, kind of,
Do more than 20 people need to use it at one time?
It's also used as a copy center area too, so that although there's a work area and that's where people may go in and have lunch, it's also where the copy machines are set up and people, like the social studies department, doesn't have a copier. So they would go either there or the media center and make their copies in one of those locations.
So that's kind of important to put for a no bathroom, right? Is that you want to say that it's used,
it's more than a lounge, it's a workspace.
it's a workspace. It's not just
Well,
a
not
meeting area, it's a workspace and a copy
Yeah.
center.
Your total para and educator staff? Was a little like 104, but.
Yeah, 104, is that what you said?
Yeah.
I would say about that.
Just count it.
What do you want to say about the conference room?
12 people is generous.
I think so too. You're only going to get in there all at the same time. You may
Right.
fit 12 people, but you can only do it if you're going in a single file line.
Hopefully no one has to go to the bathroom.
Huh?
Right.
And don't ask for the bathroom.
No.
Yeah, once you're in, you're in.
What's the context for the conference room?
With all the meetings that happen throughout the day, so
Yeah.
we have to count how many meetings, I guess, somehow,
Right.
you know.
That
I mean,
essentially
just
has to
thinking about
accommodate
how
height.
often your office is occupied, because I can't.
Yeah. And that accommodates all IEP meetings, guidance meetings, staff meetings, RTI meetings,
Administrative meetings.
So it's highly utilized.
Oh, yeah.
parent meetings.
It's always occupied. Always.
Is it fair to say that teachers don't use this as a place they would, for example, any of those 5 departments that don't have a space would not count on this space as their meeting space?
Yeah, not the way it's worked.
So it's more scheduled, regular activities that are in whatever the 90+% utilization of the space. It's not very flexible for use of other things.
Right.
You can't just pop it in there, 'cause it's always occupied. So that gets to the next bullet
It's not,
too. That gets to the next
Yes.
bullet, right, Susan?
so can we erase that? It's just kind of a repeat. You really have no instructional spaces that are unassigned
No.
for kids to work in or teachers to tutor.
Mhm.
No, those don't.
And there really isn't any in the library anymore either
No.
now.
Did you put that in there? There's no,
Well, that's this line here, limited unassigned small group instructional spaces, there are zero.
I guess it's no. It's unlimited, it's no unassigned.
Good point. Should we put the type of activity that would happen there, or is that clear enough? Unassigned small group
Yeah.
instructional space, I mean.
I might just put in there, I assume you're talking about 2 to 3 people.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yes.
So there's no space for this. Do we have any even feel for like what the need would be? I mean, I don't know if it's 2 or 5 or 10 or like what?
at any one given time, how many spaces
Right.
would you need?
I don't see, I think that's the right question, but I don't see how we're gonna settle that tonight.
Yeah, it left me wondering if maybe that's something that, like, MSBA would just advise, not
Yeah.
advise, but they have a number for based on population or something
Right.
like that. I don't know. 'Cause that's hard to.
And I think even when we noticed when we went on some of our visits, like you would have the principal's office, you'd have a conference room, and then you'd have a few small breakout rooms. So that if it were a parent meeting, you wouldn't have to be in a conference room of 12.
Right.
We may have to do that because that's our only room because we don't have another place to go.
Yeah.
So in our configuration, off the principal's office, I could see 2 small rooms being set up that you could have a meeting with,
Mhm.
parents and a guidance counselor and a student, like 4 people in a room. That would be great. 2 of those in that area would be great.
Right. I'm just thinking, even at our newest elementary school, for example, they built a breakout room. It's not quite 1 per 2 rooms,
Yeah, it's basically
but
that,
it's
though.
close to that on
Or in
the 2
between.
academic floors.
If there's things that we can't figure out what the exact number is tonight, is there any way to kind of put just a
Placeholder?
placeholder and say, XX number of rooms,
Mm-hmm.
kind of are needed or something, so that you can kind of go back and kind of
Yeah,
start filling in some of the blanks along the way, kind of,
Anything else about instruction, these small group spaces? What do you think the community would want to know about them? Because I think this is something that many might not realize are valuable to the way we teach today.
Well, I'm really kind of stuck on this exercise because I'm still trying to get a big picture of what our issues are. And we're really down in the weeds talking about some detail. I mean, I didn't come here tonight expecting to have some perspective on the kind of one or two project breakout rooms. So I mean, what do other schools have? What does MSB recommend? There's a tutoring project that goes on in the library. How many kids are doing that at any particular time? There's all kinds of stuff like that.
Yep.
And that's, and when we met you on Tuesday, that was one of our questions, was this kind of, what are the administrative and support requirements that you have that aren't being met? So I think these are good questions. It's just not clear to me why we're diving down into them tonight.
Because I think it's the objective kinds of data that people need to understand what the need is. If we just say we need instructional
We can't give you
space,
that.
I understand that.
There's a
That's why-
whole bunch of objective data that we need, but if we put only this forward first, it's going to appear that this has, that the reason is because this has priority. And until I see the rest of the objective data that, for example, like we've asked for, I can't support putting this forward as, here's what we know so far, because it comes across as this is the priority stuff. Do you?
When we
We
first
were
started,
just-
I thought, why didn't we start with the science labs? That's an easy one, tick it off, and then go through the core. To start with collaboration is fine if we realize we're gonna be here for a long time and there's a long way to go.
I didn't start with science labs because I think that is easy. I mean, I think most people agree that. We've already done that. I mean, that's
But we can't, other than the folks across the table who work in the school, we can't add any value in this discussion.
Not true. I think what the value you add is what does it sound like to folks that are not in education in terms of what the need is. In other words, do you understand that if we describe this as small group instructional spaces, because that means something to us within the school environment, does it mean something to you? And if not, what would help, either what data that we don't have and have to find, or what data would you need?
Then here's my big issue. This is support. And everyone who attends who's going to vote on this is going to want to know what about the student stuff?
The student stuff.
The student stuff. How many classrooms? Like you've got
Yes,
one item down there with the 4 classrooms and
Right.
and 100 students and stuff like that. That's what people want to know. The conference room and the small things are not going to be the drivers of cost
Right.
on this project. And I personally don't feel the need to even highlight them at this point in the project. And again, if anyone else is,
So are you
Yeah.
suggesting that we look through this list more holistically and prioritize them? So put
We
the
can do
higher
that.
priority stuff first? Is that you're suggesting that you want
Well,
to see do? See us discuss?
my real issue is, I think, we met with Michael on Tuesday and put together a list of information we're looking for. This, and part of it is, what do you need for support? So what we're working on right now is part of the answer, but in terms of putting forth a document to the school committee, I feel that putting forth an incomplete document gives the impression of what the priorities are. And I don't know what the priorities are as I sit here right now.
I think one of the things that maybe might be more helpful or useful of, I mean, we're kind of just going from the top down, kind of whatever. And
In no particular order.
Correct. So maybe we jump around a little bit for the bigger impact or the bigger need items, classrooms, things like that, and try to talk about those things, kind of as a group. And then the things that are more like support functions that, yes, you're looking for, kind of the feedback of some of the non-educators of, how this comes across or how does it read or what other information you would need. It would, to me, it would seem like might be more helpful of, kind of if the educators took their pass at it and used the terminology that you use, kind of what have you,
And
and then ask, and we can say, what does this mean? What does this mean? How, so that we could fill in what, that means this, then we should kind of elaborate on that so other people that are going to be making decisions and on how to spend money are, kind of familiar with that.
Let me make this suggestion, which I think marries to that, is, the list that we went over with you. We could look at that list, and if we don't have answers to those things, that's what the bullet point is. This is where we need information. And where we do have information, like down on the administrative or support tasks, then we can say, here's what we've collected thus far. But we'd be highlighting both what we know and what we don't know in these bullet points.
Right. I think that's what the report is for.
Okay.
It is not to be so complete as to be ready to make a recommendation to the public about what needs to be done. It is simply to say, after the 7 times we've met, this is what we know about our building. The picture isn't complete yet. And I feel that you're feeling like you need it to be complete. It's not complete yet. This is the laundry list of facts, some as fuzzy as they are, that we have. And this group needs to either clean them up, decide not to have them at all, or, whatever. And then we're going to prioritize them and go through them and make sure they're connected to the verbiage that's above.
Well,
And I think much of this will answer many of the questions you have there.
okay. I've never been asked to give a report where I've been asked to do what's called a core dump, which is just tell me everything you know. When I've been asked to give a report to someone or some group, it's give us the highlights. Be prepared to answer detailed questions.
Sure.
But, don't give us the important and the trivial all mixed together.
I don't think we're going to do that. I think we're going to, as I said, prioritize this list in a meaningful way that we think says the big what really paints to the big picture, and we can decide what ones we don't want to include at all that are really trivial. And I agree, some of these are, but they're nonetheless things that are in this document that people have raised as points, and I want to give them the.
So is your concern that we're holding a working session, that we're kind of just listening to? We're looking for opinions. My opinion is I'd rather the school and the district say, this is what we've done and what you're doing now, and go through it with us. But to sit here and to create I'm not adding any value.
I disagree. You're adding a lot of value because you're reading them from a perspective that I can read this list and agree with everything on here because it has a taint of educational ease. It's what I see every day when I walk into that high school. But you have a bit different perspective than I do.
But if you guys had already met and you had already done this work and then you came to us, we could move through this list quickly we could say, this doesn't make sense, what do you mean? We could edit at that time, but my point is, we could sit here for 12 hours to get through that, when I think it would be more beneficial if you guys had your discussions and then came to us and said, okay, so here's what we got, what do you get, what do you don't get, what are we missing? That's the only thing I'm saying. Because we can create this list right now, but
It's not that long list.
well, that's not good then.
Well, I think that's telling to, to our earlier point. I mean, we haven't collected, and maybe this is all the data that we have, but it may be pointing to some of the solutions that are not as grandiose as some may have already thought we were gonna do, or need to do. I mean, you can't make up data. This is all the data you have, this is it.
We're not,
I know you're not, but I'm just saying,
we're not even disagreeing with anything up there.
Yeah,
We're just saying this doesn't seem to be a good use of the time right now, but if we don't have anything else to do, then.
well, the committee was done as a whole. It wasn't designed to be, it was designed to have real eclectic opinions and thoughts. So if you want us to break down and have an educator plan and present it to you as a group, we can do that. I don't think that's the value of the committee.
Okay.
The committee is all of us from all of our different perspectives.
Okay. I can understand that distinction. Okay.
So, I mean, I guess why don't we just continue on through the list and
Yeah,
see kind of
Yeah, all right.
where we end up?
sounds good. So we have about 100 students who, per class period, who don't have a scheduled class. They're in directed study. And so that would be approximately a 4 classroom need based on what we currently have for classrooms, and approximately a 4 FTE, because people need to know all the sort of connected pieces to what that may be. And
And as an example, I think that's a really good concrete thing to kind of sink your teeth in, to kind of say, I can understand what
Right.
that is, and kind of like,
Let me just ask a question about the FTEs, because
Yeah.
I'm just trying to, right now, a teacher gets, I believe it's 25% free time in the course of a day.
Mhm.
You get, out of a 7-period day, you get 2 planning periods.
You get 2 planning
And
periods.
then in the course of an identified cycle, which is eight days, at least 25% of a teacher's time needs to be non-scheduled. So the way that works out is a full-time teacher teaches 5 classes per
Right.
day, and then
Right.
has 2 extra duty periods every 8 days.
Okay, so if you've got 4 classrooms, an additional 4 classrooms that are busy each of 7 periods a day, don't you need more than 4 FTEs to staff that?
If I've got 100 kids, and I average 25 kids per class, which I think is the math that you're
Right.
doing, then that's 4 teachers.
Assuming that they're all.
Right, but that's correct,
Right.
because they're not
Yes.
teaching every period, so it would be more than that, yep.
So it's gotta be at least 5.
So if those 100 kids get all scheduled into a class, they need to have, right, but you need to have 4 teachers working with them, but you can't have, there's 4 teachers when you're teaching 7 periods.
Yeah, because if you
Right.
figure 25 per group, that's
Per grade.
28
Mhm.
additional class sections in the
So
course
it's
of the
28
day.
periods that need to be,
Right, so you
taught.
would need
the
You would
teacher
need
teaches 5, so you're talking about between
almost
5 and
6
6
teachers.
Okay.
Almost 6. See?
Good math.
I'll fix the word in a second.
6,
No,
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 4
no.
classrooms.
Classrooms,
4
right, yeah.
FTEs.
And those are,
Those are approximates, because you also got the whole schedule issue.
Right.
Which is another whole.
right,
level.
and that's assuming 25
Let's say.
kids in a class, which is, we
Right.
try to keep below 25 kids in a class. I mean, we average fewer than 25
But still,
kids in a
it's
class.
at least,
Right.
That'd be a bare bones minimum to get that
Right.
off of,
Out of there. Right. Okay, so here's the science piece. 10 of the current science classrooms are smaller than the MSBA's current guidelines at 1440 square feet.
is 10 the right number of classrooms? It's for science labs or kind of whatever? I mean, I know that the square footage is
Right.
correct, but it is,
On
There's
top
10.
of the square footage,
Right.
is 10 a sufficient number,
Right.
or do we need 12?
And do you need prep rooms for your science labs?
The MSBA spreadsheet, the template they have, based on the number of students we have, they say 10 science classrooms and 10 prep rooms, but that's at 1,440 square feet. So their recommendation, just based on their spreadsheet, is 14,400 square feet of science lab space. I believe we come in at under 10,000. So that's somewhere around, 4,500 to 5,000 square feet of science space. MSBA is saying we should have that.
Shortfall.
Correct. And then prep room, we have prep rooms, they're recommending 200 square feet per prep room, so a total of 2,000. I'm not sure what our total square footage is for prep rooms.
So they're showing 200 square feet for a lab prep room in that.
Correct. And 10 of them, so one per lab, so that's 2,000 square feet. I'm not sure what our prep room square footage is. But the number I'm seeing is 9,423 for the square footage for existing science classrooms, which I think is a compilation. I think that came from the previous science.
Harry,
Lab.
is the 1,440 square feet the science lab plus prep room included in
That
that?
is just the science.
So that, is there a separate line item for the prep rooms?
In
Would need to be.
MSBA, there
Yep.
is 200 square feet. In addition to the 1,440, there should be an additional 200 square foot prep room
Per.
attached to each class.
Yes.
Okay, so we need to.
And we share prep rooms in a number of sciences, so we don't have a separate
Not everyone.
prep room for every science class.
So the square footage that was in the original spreadsheet, you think is the lab and prep space all just together?
I don't know. I don't
That's
know.
something to make sure is clarified there.
On,
I think it's not. It looks like
Yeah.
the numbers are the classroom space and not prep space.
Oh.
Yeah. The 1440 is just the lab.
Yeah.
on-
And the 9423 that I'm seeing for existing, that looks like that's
Oh,
just
just
classroom space.
857 times 11.
And not prep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And within the spreadsheet, it looks like it's like 1102 plus 943 plus 923, so it looks like the actual individual measurements, and then 857 is the average.
on your first bullet point, under the science labs there, based on MSBA guidelines, could you add for current population?
Yes.
And just out of curiosity, where, I don't know if it's just on the MSBA kind of website, kind of whatever, but where do you, I know you have 10 rooms, and someone said something about the state guidelines said 10 rooms, I guess, for 10 labs for a school that size. Is that just somewhere on the MSBA website somewhere, like
I have
the,
to double check that. I don't.
Where I get the 10 is within their spreadsheet. They have formulas, so it's all based on total enrollment. So it says with X number of total students, you should have X number of classrooms.
so you have a spreadsheet that you plug in 1,030, and it tells you all the different rooms you need.
Correct.
And
That's
it?
the one that we shared before.
Okay.
Yeah, that's available on the MSBA website. So yeah, there's a
That's the one that
spreadsheet.
was distributed then?
Yeah, but I don't think it's. I'd have to look at it again. I don't recall it. You plugging in the enrollment in it, giving you the number.
If you plug in, there's
Okay.
a space at the bottom where you
Yep.
can plug in enrollment, like projected enrollment,
And those numbers change.
and it'll change. Yeah.
Okay.
Since you put the 1,440 for the square footage of the science rooms, it might make sense to put the 200 per for
Prep.
the prep rooms. So,
Tina, what existing science labs are not appropriate meeting national standards other than size. Can you speak to that a bit?
Yeah, definitely the ventilation is
Oh, the drainage too, for the
drainage.
safety shower.
I don't know the number, but we could look into, just like room structure, the sinks, lab benches.
Is that general
Electrical
room
qualified.
ventilation?
Electrical.
Or is that kind of like hood
There are
ventilation?
requirements for hood ventilation, we only have one hood total right now. So people dispense chemicals and then bring them safely to their class, or they trade classrooms on days that they're using chemicals.
That's kind of important. That there's only one sink for all,
One hood.
One hood.
or one hood for all X number of classrooms, and students and teachers are having to transport chemicals.
More
Is it-
often they switch classes, but still.
But
Yes,
let's put it in there.
nonetheless.
But is it pretty typical? I mean, I know some of the schools we went to go see seem to have like a hood shared between like two classes or kind of like,
In the park space, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's more typical now to have a hood that could, even if you're not in the class with the chemicals, you're walking directly without seeing other students
Yeah.
from the prep space into the classroom.
so it'd be more typical to have 5 hoods with 10 lab classes.
Typically, I think I don't remember, I think they usually even have more than one within the prep, but I don't remember that. We should check that.
So transporting chemicals scares the hell out of me.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all I care about right now, right?
But, and equally the ventilation, I mean, it's a huge issue. The prep spaces that we have don't have adequate ventilation at all. And the classrooms, we have fans, but whether they're adequate.
Is there occasion when they are transported now?
No, if they're dealing with a hazardous chemical, which is extremely rare, it would be an AP Chem. They switch classes so that the person working with the chemical is in the room with the hood.
Yeah.
So
But
the
is that
things
driving
they're
the
transporting
curriculum?
Are safe.
I mean, is that
Safe.
driving the curriculum so that like we're doing it because it's safe, but if we had the appropriate things, we would be doing more things with
At the
different
detriment of
students.
another class,
I
yeah.
have no doubt about that, because they have to make decisions, can I do this? No, I can't go to that room today.
So that if there were more, they would probably be doing different
Yeah.
experiments or different things kind of in there, so
It needs
it's,
to allow for some more flexibility in terms of what
Right.
classes are doing.
Anything else about the national standards you want to
Uh,
put in there?
Maybe if we move on,
Okay.
if I think of
Think of
anything
something,
else
go
that's
back.
worth it.
Department office remote from science department office, limiting interaction among the STEM educators.
I mean, it's true.
Yeah. Is it important enough to mention?
I don't know why we called that out in particular versus humanities or really any sort of interdepartmental collaboration, but.
I think at one point originally, all the math teachers and science teachers were downstairs and it was more easily accessible that they could work collaboratively. Now we have, part of the math departments come upstairs and we're trying to find any open classrooms we can to teach in, so we're spread out more around the building. Would that be fair to say,
I
Terry?
think I would
Yes.
argue that we maybe just more generally say that department offices are completely separated, preventing opportunities for interdisciplinary work.
So not just,
Yeah, I mean, if you think of humanities, like English, social studies, or even any other, yeah.
Well, like social studies though is right within all the rooms used for social studies now, isn't it?
Yes, but it's
But not in a
listed
foreign language, not in
Right.
English.
I see. I get
for
it.
math.
Yeah.
Oh, it was segmented. Music and band on the other end of the building.
Right.
Art,
Right.
complete.
Somebody said the phrase they wanted. Department offices are, are what?
He said, I like the way he said it. I don't remember what he said, so. Our offices are, I said spread apart maybe? Spread throughout the building, preventing or limiting interdepartmental or interdisciplinary collaborations or collaboration.
You know, some would argue that spreading that all over the building would facilitate the collaboration.
Same way.
So, well, that way they're more likely, if math is here and science is here and English is over here, and that's where the departments are, that's where the classrooms are, then there's no reason for them to mix. So I'm not questioning what your intent, I'm not sure that language is going to convey to others the problem you really have.
So we're talking about we're not talking about within department collaboration, that's what you're saying?
We're talking about, yeah. So, you know,
What would you suggest?
well, I think it's worth noting that your department offices, actually, I think the issue you have is that your department office, your teachers are not grouped around, your classes are not grouped around the department offices.
That's a second issue. Yeah.
Okay.
So one issue is that the department workspaces, promote interdepartmental work, but not intra.
No.
Is that backwards?
Intra, but not.
Exactly.
So,
So we need both.
We need both.
Both the classroom, yeah.
Right.
So ideally, the workspaces would be like collected, or at least closer, and then the, classrooms would be.
but even under that model, you're still going to have department offices spread throughout the building, aren't you?
It's unlikely that everybody would get to be collected together, but at least if there was some
But they could be
strategic-
grouped together. For instance, it would make sense if the English and Social Studies office were somewhat near each other with their classrooms on the outskirts of it.
Right.
And math and science and technology kind of grouped together, the classrooms on the
Exactly.
outside of it, and then you can have music and fine arts
Well, I
that are
think
currently in the
that's what
opposite
you
end
want
of
to
the
say is
buildings.
related departments should have their department heads near each other to facilitate collaboration. And they don't.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay. I call it a program, but I don't know if that's the right word there. Technology and engineering program has outdated equipment, right? It's not oriented for fabrication and design.
Michael,
Yeah.
can you push that up?
Sure.
No,
Yep.
no, go down so we can see the top of the, yeah,
There you go.
thanks.
What else do we want to say about technology and engineering?
I think that the space is organized to support almost older programming, so we don't have the capacity for current programming.
Is it area, equipment? Like, what is it that's,
I would say both. And programming not meaning just computer programming.
Right.
I don't know if there's a better word than programming.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
people don't misunderstand that. No, I said
Oh,
it, though, so
okay.
in case you were gonna say.
and
So
it,
is the equipment driving the programming?
Yeah, I mean, if you, in particular,
That's a good point.
yeah, definitely. Like if you think about the space, there's a wood and a metal shop, and then there are computer labs. But the wood and metal equipment is fixed, so that's really all you can have in there. It's not classroom space at all.
So the physical space limits the curriculum for the technology.
well, it's also the equipment, right? It's the
Right.
actual,
Physical space
it's
and
the,
the
Space
within.
and equipment, right.
The space is actually a size
The
of
size
space.
is great.
It's just that
the stuff in there
Yeah.
that's
current
connected to the
equipment-
floor.
doesn't align with what we could be offering, for example, a robotics lab, or a true fabrication lab, or a true, maybe even another graphics lab, based on how much people want to take that course.
But would it be fair to say, like, even if you were to keep a wood or a metal or kind of whatever, that it wouldn't be such gargantuan equipment?
Exactly.
That it would be a smaller
Smaller.
footprint, kind of, to
Right.
be able to accommodate other things and have more flexible space and kind of what have you.
Right.
That it's, you know, kind of old, reliable, kind of big stuff, but if you were going shopping today, that's not what you would go purchase.
Correct.
Looking at the MSBA spreadsheet, we've got, it looks like, between our woods and our metals, about 2,600 square feet of classroom space. They're recommending 9,600 square feet.
And that's based on the same that's a population
That's
kind of
based
a.
on- They put in 1,100 kids. Now, they're saying, assumed use 50% population 5 times per week. We're not using it nearly that much, although they include things like drafting in there as well, so that might include, we have computer space that we use for drafting. So that's assuming probably higher use than we currently have,
But
but that's still.
I would suggest we'd have higher use if we had better
I would
programming
agree.
to offer.
Yeah, I would agree.
So was it 9,600?
9,600 is what they say. They say 3 1,200 size spaces for drafting, for tech classrooms, and then technology classrooms, and then technology shops, they say 3 2,000 square foot spaces.
Would it be possible to either email the direct link to that exact page? 'Cause I know I was looking around for stuff and I could not find it. Or if we could kind of run whatever the 1,030 students and whatever that spits out, can we get that information
Sure.
just to
Yeah.
the group?
I'm-
Either way, I don't really care. But
Yep. I'm playing with it right now, and I'm trying to create some summaries of it.
okay.
Didn't I just email that out? Wasn't that the link that you asked for?
Yeah, but I don't think we looked at, it's got a bunch of tabs on the bottom,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I don't think we looked at all the tabs.
We did not,
We
that's
focused just on one, so this is probably another tab on that spreadsheet.
Right. So you may already have it, because that went out last week. But we'll send it
It's
out.
that,
It's
It's
that
this one?
document. Yes.
did you get the soft copy of it?
Yeah, I have the.
Because there are other tabs on the bottom, and I haven't seen
And I
it.
had missed the last meeting, so some of it was like, you know, I wasn't sure what was
Right.
discussed in the last
Yeah.
meeting versus
Right.
kind of.
I haven't seen what Perry's going over either, but I assume it's one of the tabs at the bottom of the spreadsheet.
Right. So, anything else you want to say about tech and engineering?
I think the only other area that I would like to see added in there, now that we're adding computer science classes,
Mhm.
we're adding gaming and programming, that the need for additional computer space for some of those specialized courses. With juggling classes in other classrooms, and we don't really seem to have enough space to deliver some of those classes as we increase those specialized classes.
Not to get too far off track on this, but on that topic, is there anything other than this committee in space looking at that whole issue of what are the tech and what is the optimal offering going forward here? You know, limited space and budget, et cetera, or no? I'm just curious.
Well, we do have a curriculum committee that's looking at science, technology, and engineering. So when that is done, we'll have some sense of what the 21st century curriculum should look like.
Okay.
And what-
Curriculum.
and
As
if
far
there's
as I-
programming that has to come out of that, then we'll have to
Yeah.
look at that.
I mean, I think it's not within the scope of the next couple of years to look at like optimal programming per se, so that's something that
Yeah.
we would need to consider kind of separately.
But
Because you need to, you know, match
Marries
those
the
two.
two.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of like sort of curricular changes.
Yeah.
But some of that's also curriculum that's not currently offered in the school that you'd be looking for in the future, but they wouldn't look at any of that stuff, correct? Like, we couldn't get, you're not gonna get any funding for stuff that you don't offer today.
Right. Well, even now, we're in, from the, particularly computer programming, we're in the process of trying to grow that because that's one of the optimal programmatic offerings. So, we do have some of that in place, which would just grow stronger if we had it.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean,
The
there's
last
obviously stuff that we
office.
have that
Yeah, so that I
could
think,
use more, better.
right, and I think that exists already, so. we
Correct,
could
that would be
argue
covered,
that.
yes.
Do you need a dedicated server room for all this stuff?
We do have dedicated server rooms. That's one of the things taking up lots of space in high school. There's some space. Does that cover that, Mary?
I think so.
Okay. I think we've already addressed this.
Yeah.
I think we've already addressed this. All right. In an attempt to answer some of the questions you were asking there, this is from our special education director. So there's limited office space for related services, social workers, school psychologists, guidance, speech and language providers, and our ELL, which is English language learner educators. Specifically, occupational therapists and physical therapists do not have a dedicated space to work with students. And our behavior consultants do not have a dedicated space to consult with educators, students, or parents. They have to do that. Both have to do that within the classroom setting, or for occupational therapists and physical therapists. Some cases on vocational sites that they go out, which is a good place to do it as well. So that's not really the issue. But within the high school, they have no space to call their own for storage of their equipment. It's all stored within other special education classrooms.
Do we have full-time equivalents for occupational therapists and physical therapists?
I'd have to get the specifics, so.
Or do we have like a percentage?
Yeah, yes, the neither one are full-time there. Probably combined, they're probably about 0.4 or maybe up to 0.6. Because we have two programs that are heavily involved, kids that would need both of those services. So I'd say it's about 0.6 combined for those two. Behavior consultants, full-time.
So how many spaces do you need for that
Yeah.
first bullet point, and how big should those spaces be?
So this could be a shared space, and this would be one space. So we're talking about two different spaces.
Is there a
What
size or?
space are we talking about?
This space could be a typical office space, so I think they dedicate about, well, for behavior consultants, I think they have roughly about 600 square feet, as they did for the elementary. For occupational therapists and physical therapists, I'd have to get more information about what MSBA would allow for high school, because again, they would have, they don't need a full classroom, but they do, you know, they have implements, they have tools and devices that the kids use, and so they need some fairly larger space, but I wouldn't say a full classroom.
Well, aside from, I mean, it's important what MSBA recommends, but I think we also just need to look at our needs.
Right.
And so if you could put a placeholder in there for
Mhm.
how much space, how many square feet, you know, XX square feet
Yeah.
or something like that.
And this is
But right now, the way it reads, it says there's limited office space, but we don't say that there's a need for one additional, like, you know, kind of they don't have, there's no dedicated space, right? They're-
right.
Well, oh, okay. Because if you list guidance in there, there is some dedicated.
I didn't list guidance.
No, but in the parentheses,
there is,
guidance
yes,
only
yeah.
is changed.
Maybe do,
So,
you
I
know,
don't
what,
know.
Yeah,
Michael,
we'll
I wonder
take
if you
them
should
on
do guided separate.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
'Cause those are really specialized services.
You also have the guidance space slash career center area that was larger, but that office has been cut in half. So now it's like a career office versus,
So there's
Career
no
center.
career center for the kids to do research or something like that?
No.
There's no collaborative space?
that was
for-
originally in our plan and it was bigger than the office. It's been split into, we have another support position in that, and even the space they originally had should have been double. To have like a work area where kids can go in and have access to, you know, computers and research, and now it's really like a separate, almost like a one-person table with a small work area.
Now with guidance, there again, you know, we have no conference space. Would one conference room be sufficient? Would two smaller conference rooms be? Yeah, we sort of need it. That's one of those ones where, like, I have no sense what would be good or what would be useful.
What I've seen from other buildings is that you walk in and there's a waiting area that's where you can have like a guidance receptionist.
Right.
And then there is a separate area where there are offices for each guidance counselor, relatively small offices,
Right.
you know, big enough for somebody to have a desk and a computer and
And
a couple
guest
chairs.
chair.
Right. And then you have, as part of that suite, a conference room where you could have meetings with, you know, up to 10 or 12 people, something along those lines.
So probably one conference
Oh
room.
yeah, one conference room for a guidance suite
Yeah.
Okay, so.
is what I
that
think
answers
the
my question.
norms, is what the norm tends to be.
And I guess some of the feedback from the non-educator side, I guess, is like hearing from other schools or kind of walking through the high school and kind of not realizing all the things that might happen, but just colleges come in and they're looking to talk to students and there's no place to do those things. I think those are the types of things that resonate with people that I think a lot of people would say, okay, you have a conference room for a guidance space. I don't know what would happen in those spaces, but so, kind of indicating that it's for, college visits and kind of these types of things to kind of say what the space is really, what's the benefit of that space.
Right, and that's a perfect example because that is, we do. We have, I walked through guidance the other day and there was someone from a college who was there meeting with 4 or 5 students. And that's happening directly in front of the guidance secretary's desk, in the same place that students are coming in if they are upset or have a problem or are waiting to see a guidance counselor.
And that's another good point, I guess, that the lack of privacy for some of those things kind of,
I have a question about that. And it's a little off tangent, but, so I apologize, but I've done, I had one experience where I called up Acton Boxborough because I was supposed to interview one of their students from my college. And they said, well, we don't do them on site. So is that unusual, or are we doing something
Was
unusual?
it an alumni interview?
Yes.
I don't think we generally do alumni interviews. It's more informational stuff as opposed to a one-on-one alumni interview. I don't think
Okay.
we generally host those.
Okay.
We're hosting more informational.
You're doing informational sessions as opposed to real admissions interviews?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not aware of actual admissions interviews happening on site.
Okay.
Although we do have, I think we'll have sometimes, we'll have athletic reps from schools who might be talking to specific athletes.
Was that the sports department?
No, that's happening in guidance as well.
No, I mean, is it the coach or one of the assistant coaches that's talking?
I think it could be.
So that's not really the admissions office?
Right, no, it's not the admissions
Okay.
office, but it's college representative talking to students.
In their minds, it's admissions.
They're doing a selling job.
They're doing a selling job.
As opposed to an evaluation.
Anything else about guidance?
We just need some square foot
Yeah.
requirements around those.
Yeah. I want to jump up to this so that folks understand this one and maybe can add as well. this comment here, special education instructional space is limited and not designed properly for the current population of students. So even since 2002, when the last renovation was finished, we've added a continuum of special education services because it was non-existent in our high school. And the kids began to come up through the grades. So we have taken over essentially 4 spaces. Some I don't think were classroom spaces prior. And those rooms are not, we have retrofitted them as best we can, but they weren't built from scratch to be special education spaces. One issue, for example, is in both rooms they have to have a kitchen for the kinds of service delivery that they provide, and the kitchens aren't handicapped accessible, so they don't have they're not handicapped accessible. So that's a detriment.
I think it's important to put down that X number of classrooms for a total of Y square feet have been retrofitted for special ed requirements.
Because it's really 2 things, right? It's the loss of those spaces for
Right.
regular ed, right?
Right.
And then they're not the best of spaces for special ed.
Right.
That it's the best you can do under the circumstances, but it's not,
Yeah.
ideal.
Exactly.
So what else is not available in those spaces? Is there any special equipment? Is there any, I don't know.
Well,
What about the LC3 structure? we were talking about?
they probably have the best structure, to be honest, because they have a suite
Mhm.
and they have multiple spaces in there.
So maybe that's what we have to have in mind when we
Exactly.
are making recommendations for
Right.
what we need.
Right.
Well, the MSBA spreadsheet for special ed recommends 12,080 square feet based on our population. And according to what I'm seeing here, we've got 4,600.
12,000 square feet?
Yeah, because you need X square feet per student, and it's different for handicapped students, so they calculate that in whether you have them or not.
Oh, so they assume.
Isn't our gym 9,600?
Yes, but in totality, so we have essentially 8 different programs that we run that are special education related. So those 8 spaces would total 12,000 square feet.
So it's, according to their spreadsheet, we should have 8 950 square foot self-contained sped rooms. We have 4 that average 800 square feet. We should have 8 sped toilets. We have 2 self-contained sped toilets. We should have 4 resource rooms of about 500. We have 1, and we should have 4 small group rooms of about 500, and we have 1.
So you should detail all that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the stuff. If you're 4 rooms short and you're, kind of,
8,000 square feet.
Laboratories short.
yeah, room short, laboratory short, and square footage short are.
What was the delta in overall square footage, Eric?
It was 7,500 square feet.
All right, moving on to media. So media center configuration is interrupted by non-library uses. Student supervision is impeded by design because of that large area that is now non-library offices.
So in the middle of the library, the square block is where we have our server room, our tech support.
I think you need to detail that.
Yeah, so that's like a chunk in the middle. And then I think we have at least 2 or 3 other offices that have moved into that library area. A speech therapist, school psychiatrist.
That's right.
We moved the academic support center
Mhm.
into that room. So it's starting to turn into,
Our computer lab is core, in current demo
Yeah.
computer lab space.
yeah.
But did you say there was a main server room in there?
Yeah, so
That's the main server.
that's where everything feeds into. So there's a server room, and then off of that, there's like a tech support
And it's like a
workroom.
large server room?
Pretty sizable.
Yeah, it's probably half the size of this room, but then there's also like outside of the server area, there's 2 or 3 tech support people, and then there's another, so that used to be the librarian's office, which now we have 2 tech support people in there, and then a tech support office outside, then a server room.
So it's not necessarily the server room itself, it's the server room plus
Exactly.
office space that's
Probably
taking up that
equivalent to the
space.
space,
Yeah.
like of the library.
Right.
So you don't have like a line of sight when you're in the library, you have to walk around it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Then I think our video room has turned into, we have a speech therapist working in one room. And then I think the librarian's regular office and then storage office has been given to support staff as well.
You know, for my purposes as an outsider, I'd like to see, and I know you just spoke of them, what the 6 offices are, because
Mhm.
you're gonna have to put those positions someplace in the building.
Right. Okay. And in the center, oh, an ELM.
We have the ASC in the back corner too.
So we did the 2 computer labs and the academic support center.
The academic support center is for kids who need extra help. So maybe the bullet above that, the school psychologist, just indent that once so you can tell that it goes with the
Goes with
6
that one,
offices.
right. Do the 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What am I missing? Oh, the tech staff actually have 2 of those offices because there's the room where,
How heavily used is the academic support center?
what do you think, Barry?
I mean, it's used every period. We have kids who'll do makeup testing in there as well.
So
I
that
would
should
say
be,
as far as kids who are in there actually for academic support, I would say 5 to 10 kids a period, and I would say 12 to 15 is the max that you can. I mean, that's probably more. You probably wouldn't want more than about 10 or 12 kids.
so
in
it's
there.
it's used
Oh, yeah.
consistently throughout the day
Used every period of the day.
for support, student support, but also like giving a makeup test in there would you give a makeup test in there when other kids need help so that you got 2 or 3 things going on in
Yes,
an
there are
area
always 2 or 3 things going on.
where a child or a student is taking a test? Ugh.
But don't we have that also as a bullet point higher up? Where we were talking about collaboration rooms for 2 or 3 people?
I think they're separate, right?
Yeah, so those were the breakout rooms that we were talking about.
Yeah.
So this would not be considered a breakout room because this is a supervised room. We have a staff member who organizes it.
Okay.
and
So that's a
maintains-
student dedicated resource.
This is a
room.
student dedicated
Okay.
resource. If anything, we probably would like to expand it into more of a dedicated resource, with different staffing.
But, I mean, I think, at least from a non-educator side, understanding that it is makeup exams and someone getting help with homework, all happening in the
It's
same
disruptive.
environment, it's pretty
It's
easy.
not, I mean, a kid getting it, like, they're sitting in a study carrel, they're taking their test, so there's not noise going on.
Oh, it's not open and,
Oh, no,
oh, well, we didn't know that, okay.
Yeah. No, this is a room in the back corner. It's 4 walls, door.
No, it's a pretty quiet space.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It used to be down front, right up at the top of the stairs and the ramp.
I don't know.
Yeah, that became a sped classroom.
Cafeteria seating. Cafeteria seating is not large enough for the size of the student population. Configuration is awkward and inhibits supervision.
Isn't it also, I mean, one of the things, I don't know that we've ever said, but the cafeteria is also in main corridors. It's not like it's in a place
It's a
where
passing
it's,
area, correct.
it is a very
Well,
high
the
traffic
cafeteria
area.
is a very high traffic area.
It's kind of the central vein of the school.
When you have lunch changeovers, the people coming in have to wait until all the people going out have left before they can come in. Because
And
it's,
isn't there also something with codes in the cafeteria? Fire codes? Did I hear that?
I thought maybe they had a dress code.
No. Well, they do have a dress code,
They
appropriately
were hard
so.
to hear audibility, like the intelligibility of the.
That's what it was.
that is an issue.
That's what it was.
We did a lockdown drill, and we specifically did it during lunch, and people couldn't hear
So that's,
the announcement. That's a safety issue.
right.
But it's really an emergency announcement, not just an announcement, you know,
Yeah.
kind of a, I mean, not that you don't want to hear regular announcements,
Right.
but kind of,
You definitely want to hear the emergency.
Again, according to the MSBA spreadsheet, for our size building, square footage for the cafeteria should be 5,500, and that's for 3 seatings. So they're talking about 3 lunches. We run 4 lunches, and our the number I see is just under 5,000. So
Well, maybe the 5,500 in a central instead of all.
right,
Yeah.
cafeterias are generally in separate
Right,
areas where you're
without-
not trying to go through.
Without
these.
corridors running through
Yeah.
the middle of them.
Because that's eating into the square.
Right, where
footage.
you can actually maximize the space. That's a good point, because
Right.
some of that space is taken up with passing space
Right.
as opposed to eating space.
Right. So it makes it seem even smaller, right?
Yep.
yeah, because you're keeping, not that you aren't supposed to have aisles in the cafeteria in general, but you almost have wider paths through to kind of,
Right, we have to. Yeah, so that eats, that might eat 750,000 square feet.
I guess the other thing is, you know, kind of, it's not ideal to have the 4 lunch sessions, right? I mean, it's kind of like, you have to have it to kind of accommodate everyone. And I don't know what the ramifications are of having.
Lots of ramifications. That then places certain, that inhibits the master schedule in certain ways, because you have to build a master schedule that allows you 4 lunches. If we run 22-minute lunches right now, so then you have to build in a little bit of passing time. So you just created a block of time that you have to work your master schedule around.
Because if they're not in lunch, they're in class.
Right.
So,
Well, I mean, like, to me, the size of the space creates an issue of having to have 4 lunches, which creates a scheduling
Mm-hmm.
issue. So there's a little bit of
It's
a
driving the
domino
schedule.
effect
Essentially.
that, you know, kind of, I think it'd be good for people to kind of understand
Right.
what that is. Like, you know, some people are like, okay, you have another lunch period, like, what's the big, like, all
Right.
right? Like,
right.
what does it do? So
So
what?
we
Right.
should probably make sure that's in there, right?
So with the 4 lunches, that means you have to have your extended block that period, right?
Always,
And
yeah.
interrupting the extended block to have the 2nd or 3rd shift lunch kind of destroys the whole point of having an extended block.
Yep, so like English has the second lunch, so the kids go to 22 minutes of class, and they go to 22 minutes of lunch, and then they come back for about 45 minutes of class.
Right.
And
But I
your
mean,
third lunch, the same thing.
Right.
If you're first or
But
fourth lunch,
I
you
think,
get the
I think
extended
that
time.
that's sort of important
Right.
to highlight that the, you know, there's an advantage to having an extended period,
It was in there last night.
at least
I
part
don't
of
know
the
how I
time,
could for-
but if
The
you're
benefit of the
interrupted,
extended period
the
is.
benefit is lost when you
Yeah.
have to interrupt it for lunch that way.
Well, if you had a larger cafeteria, could you have fewer lunches?
Yes.
Yes.
Because then you can fit more kids in there.
So you could have 3 or 2 or whatever the,
Yes.
I mean, what's the standard? Is it 3 or is it like,
I think 3 is probably the most common.
And when you really come down to it,
But what,
Sorry.
why does that matter, I guess?
Because we were just talking about that.
No, I'm saying in this document, I think you should, what?
Well, it goes along with the flexibility of the master schedule and interrupts the long block for instruction.
Yeah, I mean, I think
It-
parents,
it-
they really knew that.
it
if
disrupts
it's
the-
handcuffs the
22
long
minutes of
block
class, they're
yeah,
going to lunch, they're going
instruction,
back to class,
right?
and not getting much done.
yes, it
It
forces it to.
dictates that,
Dictates the long.
right,
yeah, you have class, lunch, and a return to the same class. Like,
Right.
That's-
so it's not really an interruption, it's kind of like it takes over the long block.
well, it interrupts in the sense that you're interrupting the
Right,
classroom.
you start,
You don't have a
start,
continuous
you
classroom.
stop, and then you start again.
What about safety of the kids that have to sit in the hallways if there were ever an emergency?
You mean in the cafeteria?
Yeah,
They don't have to sit in the hallways.
but they choose to?
We have created now, we have these like little mini tables that run along the side, so we have enough seating space in each lunch such that kids have a space where they can sit. It might not necessarily be next to the people they want to sit next
Oh,
to.
get over it, right?
But
But you have
there
a
is
spot to sit.
there's
Sit down and eat your
technically-
lunch.
There's technically enough, butt space that we could get them
Okay.
all sitting down.
Well, that's good to know, because otherwise,
It'll be very tight once the weather gets colder and all the ones who are currently going to the courtyard are inside.
Right.
So it'll be a lot of bodies in a relatively tight space.
It'll be warm.
I guess, so.
It'll be warm.
Unless there's a room right now.
Warm and smelly.
It's cold in here.
In here, you're cold?
I'm warm.
Even Martinez's.
Oh, you're cold too?
That's why I have the jacket.
Don't turn the heat on, I can suck it up.
I can't, I have no control over it. The kitchen has not been updated in either renovation and still has 1960s era equipment. It is large enough, however. That is.
So it
But
has-
is the configuration appropriate for the way you're serving lunches now?
Well, we have redesigned the servery, so it's better. It's better than it was, originally. We redesigned it 2 years ago. I don't know about I couldn't speak to the configuration of where the equipment is in the back. I assume it's.
So if you had fewer lunch periods
Yep.
and thus larger crowds, could the
Oh,
kitchen support those?
I think, again, I think the kitchen could. I think the servery area needs to be looked at again, because part of the issue of serving more people is you have to have the ability to have more cashiers, and right now, essentially, we have everybody coming out one.
Okay, so we
Place.
should.
So that's the bottleneck.
That's the
Right.
bottleneck.
Should make a note of that.
Is the current configuration driving what you're serving or how you're preparing it at all?
The configuration isn't, but the equipment is. So that does limit the breadth of menu options.
I think the space, we can only have, I go to some cafeterias in high schools and they've got multiple lines that you can be going through. I think if we wanted to, if we wanted to have a salad bar line, it would be tough to really incorporate something like that and have multiple options. It's really going through one line.
You have one line?
Essentially.
In 22 minutes.
You have four different areas you could be grabbing food from,
But you pay
but you
one
all
cashier?
come through one cashier.
Well, we've got 2 cashiers going.
Two now, yeah. But together, right?
So 2
Side by side.
cashiers ringing up how many people?
They play with it a little bit, so
Okay.
they've got 2, so you can actually go to 2 different
Oh, good.
checkout
It's got
places.
So they have
four, it's like
250,
200 kids, yeah.
250 or whatever going through there in the 22-minute
And
period.
depending upon the lunch, I think the max is about 350 in one lunch.
And lo, the poor kid that comes in late.
Right.
It's amazing though, they eat fast.
They
Like you
do.
walk around and there aren't kids the last 2 minutes still eating generally.
All right, we're in the final stretch.
Well, you have to do it.
So, talking about the main entrance and some of the parking situations, this gets to some of the main header about sort of the configuration. The main entrance of our high school is right at a bottleneck area because it's right where the cafeteria exits and so forth, and you have two main areas, corridors coming into it. So there's no easy way to redirect kids because they all have to come through that main area. So it's just not a good area for, it wasn't well designed. And our main community spaces, the media center, and the auditorium, aren't off the main entrance.
So can you put in parentheses the media center and the auditorium where after community spaces, so people know what that means? Or gyms, the gym, right?
Yep. And therefore, the parking is not connected to those three areas. Somewhat is to the gymnasium. What are you thinking, Martina?
No, I'm just reading your next one, the code deficient
Oh,
bypass.
it's ridiculous. I don't know how that ever passed code. You know, the way I would describe for people to go to our auditorium is through our cafeteria and through.
That funky, scary
I mean,
little.
yeah.
Side
I mean,
like
it's
It's
creepy.
It's not
creepy.
even wide
It is
enough
creepy.
for one person almost.
But I
Have you been
think
down there?
Yeah, build a funhouse, raise money.
yeah,
That is actually a good
that
use
is a
for
good
it.
idea.
Very good.
It's Halloween.
I think many, I assume when they designed the school, what they anticipated was that people would enter only on the side where we have this gorgeous entryway for the auditorium.
Yeah.
But, you know, you have elderly people or people who are handicapped need to get into the building as quickly as possible. They need to come. So, and our handicap accessibility for that, our elevator is hidden.
I didn't even know there was one.
You know, it took me a while.
I didn't either
I
for a
figured
long
there had
time.
to be.
I kept hearing people
I
say
didn't know.
2 elevators, and I said, "Where's the second elevator?"
Yeah, it's there.
You have to pull.
You do have to do that. When kids get detention, that's what they have to do.
Oh, you're sick.
Because access elevators is hidden.
Where is it? Where
So
is
it's in the media center.
There's one there, and then there's one by the one for the
Right.
auditorium. You would go via the gymnasium.
You go back to gym.
You'd have to enter the ramp that way.
Oh,
over.
right. Right.
I'll put you on. You can get fixed. All right. Now this may talk about Birdie. This shouldn't.
Our access to elevators isn't handicap friendly or something like that.
Yeah.
You were just saying
Is it
it's
just
not
not
easy to
friendly, or is
find.
it just not?
Like a person
Right.
Yeah.
Couldn't,
Yeah.
it's not, you have to know where it is, for sure.
It's-
I don't like it, but we'll fix it. There are too few classrooms to schedule the school in a manner that encourages the collaboration among departments or specialty areas. You count up just those instructional spaces. There are, if you take 1087 and you divide it by, I think it's 24, you need 55 instructional spaces per period. That's not in reality how we would do this. With the average of 20 per class per load. Currently, we have 52 classrooms. That doesn't include the media, the special education rooms, or the gyms. But that does include the 10 science labs.
I played with this spreadsheet a little bit and broke out and tried to figure out how many classrooms do we have and separated out computer labs because they have a separate place for that, separated out sped rooms, and
This does include the computer labs.
I counted us as having 33 instructional classrooms, and MSBA recommending for 1,100 students 39. And the difference in square footage was 25,575 and 33,150. Then they had computer labs in a separate place, and then science labs that I mentioned.
Those are separated out as well.
So, yeah, science labs are separate out from that number.
Yep.
And then computer lab space, like the graphics lab, wood, metals, those were all separated out.
Okay, that's included in this number.
Music, band, and all that stuff, they have them separated out in different places.
Mhm.
So that was a shortfall of just looking at, like English, social studies, math classrooms, a shortfall of 6 classrooms and about 7,500 square feet of classroom space.
And how many room shortage?
So it's six rooms down from what MSBA is saying with the population we have.
Kind of goes back to the same number that we talked about earlier, that if we added 4 classrooms, with the FTE, so I think we were back looking at
And you can fully
4,
schedule.
right?
I think I mentioned in another meeting, we're sitting at like 93, 94% capacity. In other words, classrooms are used 93% of the time. And then you give in 0.93%,
Is that
4%
in
of
your
classrooms are
document?
being used. I think MSBA looks at like 80%, 85%.
I think it's 85%, I have to find, but I think that's what they schedule for.
You said ours is
Yeah.
93,
Three.
so
Three,
that
93, I think,
definitely
is
should be
right.
in there.
Can we go back to the main bullet point there?
Yes.
Because,
Too few classrooms? Is that what you consider the main bullet point?
yes.
Yeah, okay.
In a manner that encourages collaboration among departments or specialty areas.
Too few
There-
classrooms to meet the
I think,
curriculum
yeah,
needs.
that's what I was gonna say, right? Just too few classrooms, colon. All right, and this assumes an average of 20 per class per period, which is not the understanding, right?
Which is not the cap we have.
Right. But right now, what's your average in your current schedule, Perry? What are you running for an average for the number of kids in classes?
Between 20 and 22, and then we'll have some that go higher and some that
Yeah.
go lower depending.
No, that's fine.
Oh,
So
okay.
we're there, you know,
Okay.
so this looks at 16 and 24, is why I
That's
chose
fine.
20.
If it's, the average is 20,
Yeah.
then that's the, okay.
Martina, what was that? Oh, it was the 93.
Classroom usage percent.
Classroom usage needs to be put in.
In MSBA, I see the formula here, they're basing it on 23 students per class at an 85% utility.
Oh, that's a good statistic.
Yeah.
And that'd be good to
I'm sorry,
compare
right.
93 versus their,
39
Right.
classrooms is based on 23 students per class at an 85% utility for classrooms.
so we're 8% more utilized than the state average.
Average, what's the cap? They
And
don't
plus, I
say.
think they have the other areas pulled out of that number, correct, Barry? The science labs and,
Correct, and that does not include,
Should
that's,
list it the way
does not
you
include science
spoke.
classrooms, art classrooms, voc tech classrooms, and
So
shops.
can you recalculate your utilization based on that new metric?
My utilization is based on that, I believe, because I did not include things like computer labs. I may have included, you know what, I actually did include,
The voc rooms,
I did include some of the voc rooms.
and you would have included the labs, I'm sure.
All right, you know what, maybe I can do a quick.
Yeah.
Can we also add the square footage deficiency that we have, like the 6 classrooms and how, like, whatever the number was square footage wise that we're
The square
short?
footage shortfall was, here, I can do it real quick.
Can you say 7,500 square feet?
Yeah, it was about that, 25, yeah, 75.
which equates to like 6 classrooms, you said.
in all the areas that they're giving for the MSBA are all net areas. It's like inside dimensions of the rooms that they're saying.
Right.
A 400 square foot room is you take a tape measure 20 by 20 inside the room.
Yes.
That's the way that spreadsheet works.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
but you then can add casework, so it's, the casework isn't beyond that 20 by 20. Right.
Yes, correct.
Right, rather than,
Recommends.
yeah,
The
rather than,
nominal wall
Right.
dimension,
Yeah.
kind of,
Yeah.
MSBA recommends 85% utilization.
of classrooms, saying you're using 93% of your
Yeah, it's just-
building is not what you're,
He's going
Okay.
to give me a cleaner number so that we can compare apples to apples
okay.
there.
But I think to your
Yeah, but
point, if
the-
I saw that we were using 93% of the
Yeah.
building, I would just assume it's filled with something versus
Yeah.
instructionally
We're really
scheduled.
talking about,
Utilization
Mhm.
Right.
versus use of.
where we are at 93% classroom utilization.
Yeah. MSBA recommends. Oh, that's good.
Looking at the time, I know it was a painful exercise, but I actually think we have a pretty good bulleted list. What I would recommend, and I'm going to email this entire document all to you, and let's read it thoroughly. Go back, now I know there'll have to be some changes in the verbiage, because it doesn't, and when we come back together, what I'd like to see us try to do is clean up the verbiage part and prioritize this list. By then, we should have, if we haven't already answered the questions, and I think we've answered many of them, we'll make sure we go back and pinhole the specific questions.
Yeah, where we did address some of this stuff, like in classrooms, one of the things we were curious about is, if you need more classrooms, and I realize you broke out science labs there, but if you need more classrooms, are there some, do English classrooms have different requirements than math classrooms? Some sense of,
Right, the answer to that is actually no. I mean, those
I'm
rooms
just saying, if
are
that's,
are interchangeable,
okay,
which is
And
nice.
that's why the science labs are broken out separately,
Right.
because they
Okay.
are so
I don't know,
specific.
history, the humanities, whatever
Yeah,
else.
those all get
So-
interchanged.
Except for the science lab, a classroom is a classroom is a classroom.
Right, and I would just say art is probably,
Yeah, I was gonna say
Art is
core
different.
Art, music.
They treat voc tech and business different.
so we can distinguish those.
Okay, good.
I would like to see your prioritized list. Like, I can say what I think mine is, but
All
I
right,
don't
we'll do
live
it
that
first.
world.
We'll do it first.
Oh, good.
And I'll send it out to you.
Yeah, I don't want to do it. I
Yeah.
don't want to tell you what your
I'll
priorities are.
reorganize this last part, and then we'll talk
Okay.
amongst ourselves and we'll prioritize it.
Okay.
I guess the other thing is, so we've
Draft.
gone through a bunch of these things that, and I guess I don't know where the bulleted list came from, but does that bulleted list, like, it seems like there's still other spaces that if I look at least even the original spreadsheet that showed what was existing and what MSBA kind of recommended, that there were other shortcomings that we didn't talk about tonight.
Okay.
And I don't know what they all are, but my gut feeling is, maybe these are the big ones,
Right.
and there's other ones that are, kind of smaller, but my sense is this is not all those shortcomings.
Right.
So
So we'll go through that list, and if there are bigger ones out there, like, I think, for example, the auditorium there wasn't a huge difference. It was pretty much on target. Gymnasium space was pretty much on target, things like that. So we'll go through that list, and if there are huge disparities, we'll grab those as bulleted items to notice.
Okay.
what about your systems?
You're talking HVAC and that sort of systems.
Is that,
Yeah, well, I mean, right now,
I don't know, yeah.
Yeah.
It becomes part of the gross,
yeah.
So it doesn't need to be,
no.
I was thinking of gross, you're thinking about operationally, are they work, what needs to be replaced? I mean,
right.
there's no immediacy for any of our systems, but on a regular schedule of, you would fix them. We already have our roofs on a regular schedule, we have our boilers on a regular schedule.
So they don't have to be replaced. I mean, you just
They
didn't
don't
work
have,
on the roof.
well, I mean, the roof is coming up within the next 5 years. I think it's in 2019 or something like that. So, I mean, it's coming up. So
So there's major capital
Expenditure.
On the horizon.
projects on the horizon
But I
that
think,
would be useful, I think, to kind of just say, hey,
Right.
these are the things kind of, you know,
You know,
on the
outlook.
horizon,
Right.
kind of,
near-term outlook or
Yeah.
something
or
like that.
5-year capital, you know, kind of.
Don't we have a copy of that?
yeah, we have a couple.
I think we,
But I just want to, it should be
Yeah,
in
but
here,
that is
that's
all
all.
part of.
Telling the story.
Yeah, so
I disagree with that, because, yes, because I think part of the discussion is gonna be, look, we're gonna have to spend X amount of money on a new roof anyway, instead of making it a requirement here.
Well, let that ruminate. The one thing though I would put on there that isn't part of our, it's part of our capital plan, but it's not something, is window replacement, because almost all of our windows are single pane windows. We've already done the light replacement and all of that piece, that's all been done, but they did not replace windows, and that's a huge,
Put in when you did propose the.
Correct.
site slabs, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
yeah. So that's a big nut to crack on our own, to do it well instead of over time. All right, next meeting. Everybody got a calendar? Can we plan out a few? Is that possible? Thank you.
Utilization number, by the way, is 92.7%. If I look at just the.
Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting. Didn't change that much.
Classrooms.
All right.
Because, I mean, the other things, you know, like graphics, our graphics lab's used every period of the day, so
Mhm.
that's.
So, this is the third week of the month, so do you want to shoot for that?
Third Thursdays are when I tentatively have school council, but I could switch it to fourth Thursday, because I'm doing fourth Thursday this month. I can make that work.
So you're looking at the third, like, so the
So
next one would be the
10th. The 16th?
16th would be the third Thursday, right?
Does that work?
Yeah.
Is 7 o'clock still good for people?
Yep.
All right. And the 20th? Is that the third Thursday of November?
Yep.
Yeah.
Just in case someone has a football player, there's a
Yeah.
JV game that night.
On
But
the
if
16th.
Oh.
if you're not on,
No,
in that situation, won't affect your schedule.
Patriots are playing
Oh, that can't be done.
What was it?
Patriots are
that.
also playing
16th,
that.
I think they're playing their Thursday night game.
Home?
Yeah.
I'll be there.
And then the 18th of December,
So we're doing the 20th of November?
20th of November? All right, that gets us to the new year.
Yep.
You said the 18th of December?
Yes. All right. Well, it's purposeful work, so I like when committees have real work. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
And we do.
Right.